Hello and welcome to The Business. I'm Trevor Merriden with a show that's essential listening for the West Herts business community. This week's show is all about franchising. Should you or shouldn't you go down this route? What is the potential and what are the pitfalls? We'll be asking those in the know. Carl French of Replico helps businesses exploit their expertise through licensing and franchising. He'll be helping us set the scene. Then we have Abi Purser in the studio. She runs the Longcroft Luxury Cat Hotels franchise. And we'll also hear from Gill Reynolds, one of her happy franchisees. Of course, not all franchises go according to plan. Debbie Gilbert learnt a lot from her first experience of working with a networking franchise, and we'll be hearing from her later in the show. That's all to come, and helping me along as always are Vicky Scott and Clare McAnulty. Hello ladies.
Hi,
all well?
Trevor.
All well?
Very good indeed, very good.
Excellent. So how's things with you? Vicky, what's caught your attention in the business news?
Well, not so much in the news, but stuff that's actually been coming through on my email and also through my letterbox. I seem to have been bombarded with offers of funding this week. All sorts of diverse sources, some of which are quite interesting, and others look to me to be quite sort of downright dodgy. But the first thing is, it always makes me feel really uncomfortable when people offer you money when you haven't asked for it. It seems a little bit weird. And secondly, why is it that it always happens when you don't need it? You know, money always gets offered when you just don't need it. It's that old adage of banks giving out umbrellas when the sun's shining. Well, it was happening a bit too much, and I happened to be at a networking meeting where there was an HSBC lady. So I got into a very interesting conversation with her about funding, about these different types of diverse sources that were coming through, and she was very interesting. She was also very straightforward. She was saying basically that the banks will really get a difficult ride. Well, you know, someone would say she would, wouldn't she? But in all honesty, she was saying that many of the businesses that come to her asking for loans and for money, they're just not prepared to fill forms in correctly. They're not prepared to fill them in completely. And a lot of people are just looking for a quick sort of no questions asked fix. And let's face it, that's not really what the way the banks do business. So not really surprising that the banks aren't appearing to lend as much as they could, and you know, all these sort of strange different other systems are coming to the fore. So it's not a surprise to me that there's all these different sorts of ways of getting money coming through. But it also struck me that any sort of business that can't fill the forms in, that doesn't want to fill the forms in, really don't know what they're doing. They don't really know where the money's going. They don't know where the money's coming in. It certainly wouldn't be the sort of place that I would invest my money. So why should the banks? And the banks quite often are playing with my money anyway. So these businesses are also the ones that aren't getting the loan from the banks. They're probably also the ones that are going to be moaning when they sort of suddenly realise that they haven't read the small print and they're getting stitched up on the speedy loans that they've got. So what it really drew what really sort of the conclusion I came to was, you know, as we say so often, there are very, very few easy wins in business. And if you find one, then it's sort of probably got a few things attached to it that you haven't noticed. You just can't buy success. And I, for one, don't think that banks should be lending to businesses that don't understand the basic principles. But we know the show's all about franchises, and if you are in the market to start your own business and you are prepared to fill the forms in, there is money out there, and there is reputable money out there that you can borrow at decent lending rates. I think
it's interesting, as we'll hear from one of our interviews later on, Debbie Gilbert. She comes out with this phrase that if it seems too good to be true, it probably probably is. Claire, what's caught your eye?
Well, this week I thought, as we're doing franchising this week, I noticed that the British Franchise Association is holding its London exhibition at Olympia this week. So it's a good place to start if you're interested in franchising. We'll be telling you a little bit about it tonight, but if you want to find out more, why not go to the exhibition? And I had a quick look at their Twitter feed, and on the Twitter feed, the HSBC's head of franchising, Catherine Hayes, had taken time to pass on her top 10 tips for getting the best from your day at Olympia. And I won't go through the 10, but my favourite 2 were: don't sign up for anything, and wear comfortable shoes.
Sounds like two great pieces of
And I know that those are very, very practical.
To carry
things.
through life, really.
Exactly, but I just thought, I know they're very practical, but actually they're probably the most important. Don't sign up for anything and wear comfortable shoes.
Yeah.
So it looks as though we're an advertisement for HSBC this evening, doesn't it?
It sounded like that. Let's try and get through the rest of the show without mentioning them. We'll try our best. I saw it's obviously on the franchise. We knew we were going to do a franchise theme, of course, but I did in any case see an interesting article in Forbes magazine. Obviously, that's largely American focused, but the franchise pitfalls in this case are probably the same the world over, and they came up with 4, and it'd be interesting to talk to sort of Carl French sort of later on, who's obviously an expert in these things. 4 of them, which I'll just sort of plant the seeds in our sort of listeners' minds. So hidden fees, lofty average income and revenue figures. I think Debbie, amongst others, has a few things to say about that later. A strict boss. One of the advantages, it says, of having your own business is the independence you have in running it. However, some franchises have strict rules on how you run it. An advantage to buying into a franchise is they give you a playbook that's more likely to be successful than if you start an independent business. But the playbook can include restrictions as well. So you have to look very carefully, as it's starting to be a bit of a theme already, at the rules and the small print. And if you have difficulty leaving a franchise, doesn't mean it's not a good franchise, but it's just something you have to watch out for. Okay, as we said, we've got Carl French coming in. He's an expert. He's from Replico, and he's an expert in licensing and franchising. And we'll be hearing more from him after these messages.
If you want to know what's going on in St Albans and West Herts, then join Telegraph journalist Louisa Peacock as she debates the local current affairs and news of the week with live guests every Tuesday from 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam. Tweet along with the show at RV Outspoken or at Louisa Peacock. Outspoken, Radio Verulam's local news and current affairs show with Louisa Peacock, Tuesdays 7 p.m. right here on 92.6 FM Radio Verulam.
Has your child outgrown day nursery? Would you like them to attend a more structured environment with a wide range of interesting and challenging activities?
I like cooking stuff with Mrs. Federici.
Mount Carmel Kindergarten in Sandpit Lane is now offering extended sessions, so even if you work, your child can enjoy an outstanding environment that prepares them for school and is somewhere they will want to go to every day.
I like playing games. I love my teachers.
For more, see our website at mountcarmelkindergarten.co.uk. Mount Carmel Kindergarten, private education for little people.
Mount Carmel Kindergarten.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
Welcome back to The Business. It's 10 minutes past the hour. Now, we want the show to be about the business community. We want to know what you think and what you can share. So whether you're listening to this live or listen to it back on playback, then obviously we love to hear your views. We get a lot of them on Twitter, which is at RV, that's the Radio Verulam, that's at RV The Business. Or you can email us at thebusiness@radioverulam.com, or of course phone us on 01727 839 926, and we look forward to hearing your views. Vicky, introduce our guest.
Well, it's a great pleasure once again to introduce Carl French, who's been with us before, talking about another one of his businesses. But today, Carl, it's all about Replico. I know that this is an area of business that you've been in for a good many years, and you are the resident West Herts expert on franchising. Hurrah! Thank you so much for coming along.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
So, we chose to sort of have a programme about franchising because there are so many people that are out there that are maybe coming into the workplace, having, been made redundant or being given early retirement, or coming back into the workplace after having children, or just wanting to do something different. And franchising is, or could be, a really, really interesting way of coming into a business that's sort of in some shape or form already formed. On the other hand, of course, you've also got that opportunity whereby you've got your business, it's going an absolute storm. You can't cope with any more demand, and you're thinking, how else can I make money out of this but not involving me doing the work? So there's two sides to franchising. But first, tell us how you got involved in franchising and how you came to develop this expertise.
I got into it in a very odd way compared with
Do
most people.
everything in an odd way.
Well, most people who get into franchising in terms of advisors set up a franchise and then start advising others. But the way I got into it is I was working for corporates, helping them replicate high-performance teams. So a company would have a very effective sales team, and we'd try and make it super efficient and then create more teams like that, or they were doing customer service. And I was doing things like that. I did a whole project for Scottish Power and another project for Coots NatWest Bank, and my client said, this is just like franchising, isn't it? Why don't you sell your services to the franchise market? Because, we're replicating really smart ways of doing things, and franchising is like that, isn't it? Mm. And I thought, they've got a point here, so I looked into the marketplace, did some research, and then we put a toe in the water and started off initially just designing process and training. And then what happened, it snowballed because clients said, well, can you help us with this and can you do this? And we got more experience and now effectively provide a complete service to franchisors and to some extent to franchisees.
And this can be in all different sized operations, this, in terms of expanding your own business to offering franchise, or equally support for people going into franchising.
Yeah. Probably 95% of what we do is for the franchisor, the person who's building a franchise business, because that's what franchising is really. It's a business growth strategy. Yeah. By replicating your business, but good franchises work very well with their franchisees. So we spend a lot of time working with franchisees, and we get the odd person coming along and saying, "I'm thinking of buying a franchise. Can you help me?" And yes, we can. In fact, we have a free franchise buyer's guide on our website, and I wish more people would read it because before they come along with their problems, actually.
So do they tend to come along, having dipped a toe in the water, made a few mistakes and thought, hang on a second, this isn't as easy as it looks?
Yeah, I do get both franchisors and franchisees coming to me saying we've got problems. Often when it's a franchisee, I actually refer them to a lawyer rather than help them themselves. Really? People sign the most ludicrous agreements in a moment of madness, because you get very smart people buying badly, and you say, well, how did that happen? And I don't know how many times somebody said it was a moment of madness. Really? But that there's a negative side to all businesses. But basically, most of the time it works very well, and it is a win-win combination and a way of growing a business and actually creating businesses for lots of other people.
Carl, just on that, I mean, why do so many sort of, normally sort of intelligent, enthusiastic people, who've got normally quite good business brains, why do they end up signing contracts that they shouldn't? I mean, is there a particular sort of, is there a sort of euphoria or giddy, heady excitement about franchising that they sort of get carried away with, perhaps?
I think there's something like that, but I don't think it's just something that happens in franchising. We like to credit ourselves with being very sound, rational beings, and I think a lot of human decisions are actually based on the heart rather than the head. Yeah. And people, and there is some mis-selling, but people have a long-standing desire to do something very different with their lives. They see a franchise that looks like it's the answer, because they're going to have a very different lifestyle, something they've always been interested in. And they're sort of predisposed to believe what they're told. And, it's getting both feet firmly back on the ground again and taking responsibility, which they need to do. But unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen. And I think it happens with other things. But right. It's sad when it goes wrong. I mean, it isn't always as black and white as that. I mean, people buy a franchise and it's okay, but they probably could have done better, and so on. But that's so.
Just going back to franchising as a business growth strategy. Mm-hmm. What would be the key signs in a business that would help somebody believe that franchising would be a good route for growth for them? Are there any sort of clear pointers? Yeah,
there are. I mean, probably the one most people pick up on when they're thinking about it is geographical limitations. I mean, you could have a fabulous business based in St Albans, in a niche market typically, that everybody loves to bits. But if you're not living in St Albans, you're not going to have any benefit from it. And if it's your business, there's a limit to how far people will travel. So, people come to this idea, well, actually, if I had other branches or if I replicated my magic sort of business formula, it doesn't have to be retail. It could be a service or something. Then I could get to a bigger audience and I could grow my business. And once that idea is started, then that's a big catalyst for people saying, oh, how do I do that? And they probably don't want to open lots of branches themselves because it's expensive. And after a bit of investigating, they say, well, it looks like franchising might be a way I can do that. So I think the geography is one thing. And the geography works both ways. How far can you go and how far can customers go?
Yeah.
The other thing is very much the niche business. That we are specialists, and how can we expand the business? And again, you come back to, well, we could replicate this. We could have more people doing it. So that there's a case of how can we have more of this going on? And again, if we want to replicate that, then franchising might be the answer. So, yeah, it needs to be a niche business. It needs to be specialised, not just like anything else. And then there are other factors you're looking for. You want a reasonable profit margin in a business you're going to franchise, because it's being shared, in effect, between the franchisor and the franchisee. And you need to own all the expertise and the intellectual property, as it's called. You can't easily franchise something that's really the ideas and expertise belong to somebody else. So it's got to be your own winning formula, if you like. It's amazing how many people have got winning formulas. They've got their own special way of doing something, and they don't really fully recognise what they're sitting on. We all take for granted what we know, but I meet lots of amazing people who've got something they really could franchise, who it's never even occurred to them. And
so what was the process? So I'm sitting here thinking, right, I'm going to franchise Scott and Hewitt.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds like a really bad idea to me, but let's just assume that I've got a fabulous niche business, and I'm getting a lot of inquiries from Nuneaton, because I do some work up there, and actually I'm really not wanting to spend too much time up in Nuneaton. What do I do next?
There's quite a bit you need to do before you franchise it, and some of those things you do for any new business venture, but looking at what it is that you really are selling, what it is as a product or a service, what's its unique qualities that make it so attractive, and it's doing the whole kind of looking at your brand and your offering and all those sort of things you do in any other business venture. And then I think the thing that goes beyond those normal things is how much can we bottle it, if you like? Yeah. How much can we turn it into a business in a box, all very thoroughly documented and defined with good training, so we can enable somebody else to copy it. And it's round about that when it all starts to often go wrong. People say, I've got a lovely business, it works really well, I'll franchise it. And they think just by having somebody sign an agreement it's going to work. And it all ends in tears because, if half the stuff's in their head, and there's some warning signs. People said, oh, if you really work hard and you're committed, you'll be all right. And you think, no, you won't, actually. People can work really hard and be very committed, but if they don't know what they're doing, they're not going to get anywhere. So this whole packaging the whole thing up, then doing very thorough market analysis and doing some research, looking at the whole pricing and costing model, looking at the market sectors, and just doing a thorough analysis, really.
It really is like starting another business.
It is actually. That's a good way of putting it. It is starting another business, even if almost your first business is like a pilot franchise, and then the franchise business is the new business. And in fact, some people structure their franchises that way. They create a new business, which is the franchise, and go from there.
And what when you said earlier that certain people come to you to help to pick up the pieces because things haven't gone quite so well, what are the big mistakes that people make when they're franchising their businesses?
I think I think there's several common mistakes that they make, and it's the ones that are not so obvious. One is they just don't realise how much work they've got to do to get it fully packaged, that they really have got to work out exactly how it works so that they can show somebody else how to do it. And one of the things they most often get wrong is how you actually sell, how you get new customers. Because if somebody's had a business that's gone on, say, for 10 years and is phenomenally successful, they've often completely and utterly forgotten how they got started in the first place. And in any case, what they did is completely out of date. 10 years ago, we weren't using the internet like we are today. So that's got to be reinvented almost. And if they don't do that sort of thing, then there's a recipe for failure. The other thing that people don't take into account is if you sell anything, there's a cost of sale, and it's not easy to find franchisees. You have to promote your franchise, and for every 100 people you might have contact with, maybe only 2 or 3 are going to buy. There's quite a cost to all that, however clever you are about doing it. And they don't take that into account in terms of what they're charging. So they're actually starting off by selling their franchise at a loss. Or if they've got it half complete, then they try and run before they can walk. So they take on too many people in the early stages when they're still trying to make it work, and overreach themselves, and then it all ends in tears with people feeling that it's not working properly. So they've got to take it in careful steps, pilot it and so on, even if the business is well established. And then of course, if they do make mistakes, they're recoverable and they learn from them, and within a year or two it's all running smoothly.
So how much of your time is, you're talking about picking up the pieces, and how much of your time is when people come in pre the business arrangement or the business arrangement that you talk them out of, or whatever it is, versus picking up the pieces? How much is sort of helping them right from the start, as opposed to sort of helping them with what's already happened?
I think 80% of what I do is people starting from scratch.
Right.
The other 20%, there aren't many just picking up the pieces. The two picking up the pieces bits, if you want to call them those, are people just can't get enough franchisees and they're getting a bit frustrated. How do I get enough suitable people? Or they have performance problems. Like one franchisee is a superstar doing ever so well and somebody else is struggling. That latter problem is usually a lack of adequate training, and they haven't designed the training well enough, and we can make spectacular improvements to that. And in terms of getting franchisees on board, that's something we've learned the hard way over a number of years. And the conventional idea of how to do that is just very expensive and doesn't work that well. The rest of it is helping people from scratch, and putting the package together and piloting it and so on. And that's probably 80% of my time. One of the reasons is that tends to be quite a long project, which takes quite a bit of time. Yeah. Some people have got things in a more complete state before they come to us, so there's less to do then.
So how do you price your services? You just talked about somebody starting up, not very well sorted out. Somebody else could come practically there, and you're putting finishing touches or doing training. How do you? A
nice question. Yeah, we always give a free consultation, which usually sort of like an hour on the phone, or if the person's near enough, we can meet up, go through a few regular sort of questions, to find out where they are. We usually do a thing called a blueprint, which is producing a complete, at a fixed price, doing a complete design documentation of what the franchise would look like, and then after that's been done, then you can scale the project and cost it and decide how to go forward. And it does vary, as you sort of suggested. Yes. It varies a lot. Some franchises are very simple and straightforward and easy to do and not that expensive to do, and others are massive undertakings. So once you've done a blueprint, though, you can usually work out pretty accurately what it's going to cost to do. And it's not a cheap thing to do.
No, I'm absolutely sure that it wouldn't be. But then very few real business growth strategies are, and the big picture big game is
Yeah.
is big. Well, thank you enormously for sharing your knowledge. We've got some actual franchise. One of the people that you helped set up a very successful franchise coming on shortly. So it'd be really interesting to hear from her. And we've also got somebody that's actually one of her franchisees. But we're also going to hear from some people who've had some bad experience.
Yeah,
and
inevitably.
It does sound that it's a complicated business. It really does sound like it's worthwhile getting some support and some help in the early stages. So if they want to come to you, Carl, how do they get in touch with you?
If they go to our website, replico.biz, replico.biz, they can contact us through that. And there, as I said, there's some free downloads on there. So
just remind me. Tell the listeners about the free downloads again.
Well, they do need to register, but there's no other obligation. And there is a booklet which is basically how to buy a franchise.
Right.
And it is independent. It's not trying to get them to buy one of our clients' franchises. Yeah. It's only a short booklet with lots of advice and guidance, which we've had third parties check as well. And I believe anybody thinking of buying a franchise reading that would make it much more likely that they wouldn't fall into one of the more obvious traps that so many people do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It sounds as though if you're going to go to the franchise show this coming weekend in Olympia, you need a copy of Carl's book, comfortable shoes, and don't make any hasty decisions.
Absolutely.
Thank you enormously, Carl, and I hope you're going to be staying with us for the rest of the show.
Yeah, it'll be my pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, this is Danny Smith. Join me weekdays from 4 till 7 p.m. for West Hart's Drive Time, with features including Chris's Film Club, Pound Saver, Community Notice Board, Calendar Artist, Hot Topics and many more besides. We also feature correspondence covering topics such as lifestyle, consumer advice, cooking, interior design and travel. We have regular interviews, local news and sports, celebrity birthdays, travel and traffic updates and competitions as well. That's all on West Hart's Drive Time with me, Danny Smith, on 92.6 FM, Radio Verulam.
Radio Verulam Community Partners.
The Abbey line connects St Albans Abbey train station at the bottom of Holywell Hill with Watford Junction and was one of the UK's first official community railways.
The community rail concept was designed to help create a more sustainable future, to reduce the cost of running the line without compromising safety or service, and to involve local people more closely in the development of their railway.
For 150 years, the Abbey line has been taking people between St Albans and the centre of Watford and beyond.
It continues to do this, and all for at most £6.60 return, and in only 16 minutes.
For more information, visit their website, which is abbeyline.org.uk.
For more on Radio Verulam Community Partners, go to radioverulam.com/community partners.
You're listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. We're the voice of the local business community on 92.6 FM and on radioverulam.com.
Welcome back to The Business. It's crack on, sort of half past the hour, actually. It's spot on. We're doing a franchising special. We've just heard from Carl French from Replico, who's been giving us his expert advice on licensing and franchising, focusing on the franchising side of things, interviewed by Vicky Scott. And we said we'd have some real live franchisors and franchisees in the studio, and we've got one in front of us at the moment. Welcome to Abi Purser from Longcroft Luxury Cat Hotel. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi, do you want to tell us a bit about your business?
Yes, well, I started Longcroft in the June of 2010. Basically, we take care of people's cats when they go on holiday. We have a cat hotel, and it all started when we had a very common little cat called Norman, who we were trying to go on holiday and never needed to use a cattery before, and started to have a look about and thought, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I don't really want to leave him with you, thank you.
Do you mean sort of dodgy cats?
Well, just not terribly clean.
Yeah.
Not terribly clean. Lots of cats. Cats and dogs together, which is probably not a terribly great combination.
Right.
And the cats looked quite sad, and they were meowing, and they weren't selling it to me, to be honest.
Right.
So we just bought a new home with a rather large garden, and thought, okay, well, we'll build one.
Okay. So did you do what most people do, sort of like you look in online or Yellow Pages or wherever it was, and find that actually nothing really did the job for you at all?
In terms of when I was trying to find somewhere for Norman?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I went online, I Googled everything, and everywhere was saying luxury, and I thought, oh, great, they sound fab.
Yeah.
But they haven't got any pictures on their website, so I'll go and have a look. So we drove round and drove round again.
Yeah.
And after about 10, I thought, oh, this is, I found the industry to be about 50 years behind what I expected it to be.
Right.
I sort of set about creating after a long, a long chat with my mother and. Can she help me fund it? Can we set up something that's that I'd like? So basically, I made what I wanted,
right.
In our garden in Welwyn Garden City.
So you didn't actually have any experience. It's all Norman's fault.
It's all Norman's fault. Yes, absolutely.
You're not a sort of like a vet, or you've not had any massive experience with animals.
No, I'm not. I have had a lot of experience with animals. I used to saddle fit basically for. Horses. So I've got an animal background. They're a lot larger than cats. I've had many horses, cats, dogs, rabbits. You name it. I've had them. So we used to fit anything from your little Shetland pony that probably cost you £20 to your dressage horse that probably costs more than your average house. That was an interesting job, and that's what I used to do before.
So you had been involved with
animals, absolutely.
And
yes.
But setting up a hotel is a different thing altogether.
Completely different. I did research probably 20 hours a day for at least a year on what needed to be done. What was the there's so much stuff, licensing, regulations, size. But actually, the main thing that I found was that there wasn't somebody that I could go to and say, how do I do this? So it was all really about, there was some guesswork, there was, well, what do I want, what would I like? There was speaking to animal behaviourists, veterinary surgeons, so collaborating so much information and trying to get it all in one area so that we could... I mean, actually, at the time, I wasn't even thinking about franchising my business. I was thinking about, right, I'm just going to have one. So that wasn't even on the radar. But I knew that I couldn't set up without knowing everything, because I'd gone to, the owner of whatever it was, cattery, and quite honestly, I wasn't sure that she would know how to look after my cat if he was poorly or if he was nervous, or there wasn't really the care.
So you did masses of research. You set up the business, and it's gone an absolute storm.
Yes, it's gone crazy. We opened in June 2010. And by the December, I'd had about 250 people that wanted me to take care of their cats over the Christmas period. Which was crazy, absolutely crazy. So I thought, well, I can't keep doing this. People were getting quite fed up, actually, that I was, why? I'm phoning in October and I want you to look after my cat over Christmas, and why are you full? And actually, I couldn't answer them. Basically, that's how Carl and I thought, right, well, I can't afford to build 10 of these because actually it costs £40,000 or £50,000 to build what we built. People don't have money, for £40,000-50,000 times 10 hanging around.
So this is the moment when you first started speaking to Carl French from Replico.
And how did you find Carl in the first instance?
Very normal, in a good way.
I meant how did you find him?
Oh, how did I find him? How did I find him?
We know he's normal.
Nice of you to say that.
How's his manner? Oh, brilliant. How did I find him? My husband has his own business also. He goes to networking groups, and he said, oh, I know a chap, what about franchising? And I do call it the F word. I don't like it. I still don't like the word because it has got this sort of stereotypical thing. You think franchise and you think pizzas and leaflets, don't you? Well, I do. So I thought, no, I don't want to do that. Plus, what we have at Longcroft is incredibly boutique and friendly. I'd gone completely out of my way to make this very friendly, niche, beautiful little business. And I was terrified of letting somebody else take it over, or letting somebody else, do what I do.
And I've got to ask, I've got to ask Carl, how did you find Abi? Very normal as well?
Not quite so normal.
But, great fun to work with, I should say.
Yeah.
I was quite impressed, actually. I'm not trying to flatter her, but she really had done all this, as she's already said, this massive amount of work and come up with a winning formula, and with great attention to detail. So everything that you needed to do to make it work properly had already been worked out. And that is actually I think it's very unusual, actually. So I felt we got off to a really good start. And then when we looked at the marketplace, I was blown away by the commercial possibilities of a luxury cat hotel. The cat ownership in the UK is phenomenal. I think it's about 6 million cats or something, and possibly more. And lots of market research showing there's a shortage of adequate. So everything in the marketplace and everything Abi was offering, there was a sort of a niche business, no competition at the top, which is always a nice place to go for. And it's already ready to go. Really,
it does sound as though I mean, just some of the words that you've used, Abi, were an absolute reflection of what Carl was saying earlier. Niche, specialist, really understanding the business.
And there's a third person, of course, in this. Obviously, you've got Carl sort of advising on franchising. You've got you, Abi, of course, and then came your first franchisee, Gill Reynolds, obviously also of the Longcroft Luxury Cat Hotels. Now, Clare McAnulty asked Gill Reynolds how she came to be running it, and this is what she said.
It happened almost by accident, really. I wasn't looking to start a business. I'd just seen an advert for Abi's Hotel in the local cat magazine. I contacted her with a view to boarding my cats because I was going on holiday, so I went over there. And she happened to mention that she was going to start franchising the business. And I literally came away thinking, I've got to do this. So I hadn't actually put an awful lot of thought into it. I hadn't been building up to starting my own business or looking at franchises in general. It's purely because Abi's franchise was so attractive that it was that caught my attention, really. And it all started from there.
Had you not seen someone else do it, do you think you would have thought of it, or do you think it was seeing it in action and thinking, oh, actually, this looks pretty good, I'd like to be part of it?
We thought about doing it many years ago, starting up a luxury hotel for ourselves, because I've always been such a cat lover. And we thought about offering the chauffeur service, things like that. But because I had a young family and we weren't financially secure, the idea got put on the back burner. So when I met Abi and saw her set up, it was the ideal opportunity for me to do the business that I'd always dreamt of, really, but having her back in.
Did you think of doing it yourself, or was the idea of a franchise attractive to you?
I was quite happy. Obviously, it's a big decision to choose a franchise, but I was quite happy to go down that route as opposed to going out on my own. Because I'm a bit older, I just like the idea of starting a business and having her backing, really. And she's been a great support. She has a lot of things in place to help promote your business and everything. So I got off to a really good start. I think I had 19 bookings before my hotel was even built. So it was amazing, really. So I hit the ground running, and I just like the idea of her doing hard work, if you like, really, and me just coming in, following it on, and trying to build up my own client list in St Albans.
Were there other things that you feel that without her help you would have struggled a little bit with?
Definitely the marketing side, and also I think she's got a brilliant website, which I'm part of. So I think the combination of the team that she has behind her in regards to marketing is very helpful, because to be honest, I wouldn't have known where to start, really, in that respect. I would have put an advert in the local paper probably, and that would have been it. But she has lots of media coverage in one way or another. And so I was quite happy to go into the franchise having that backing.
And can you just tell us a little bit about your cat hotel?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've got 6 suites, same as Abi's set up. I'm licensed to hold up to 16 cats. I've had 14. That's the most. I've been going 2 years this month. It's gone so quickly, I can't believe it. And with the franchise, you sign up for 10 years, basically, and you can obviously carry it on after that time, but it is reviewed then. And I just love it. It fits in with your personal life because you're running the business from home. It works around you. And as I say, I've always been a cat lover, so it's just an ideal job for me because I just love looking after the cats. And they're all lovely. The owners are all lovely. It's just a really nice business to be in. There's no cash flow problems because people pay up front. And it's very relaxing, actually, because you're just stroking cats all the time, you know, so I'm very chilled out.
And just wondering, would you recommend franchising? I mean, were there any downsides? I mean, it sounds to me like the whole thing has gone swimmingly, but are there any downsides or things that if you were advising someone else, they should maybe look out for?
Well, obviously, with a franchise, you're paying every month indefinitely, which is really good in the beginning because, you know, the franchisor offers you a lot of support, but obviously once you're up and running, you don't really need them anymore. So you do have to weigh up the pros and cons as far as that's concerned, but I'm quite happy to go on that basis. I think that's the only major concern, really.
But for you, would you say that it's been a success, that you've been glad that you went down the franchising route?
Definitely. I wish I'd done it 20 years ago. I wish I'd met Abi all those years ago, and she was up and running then because I have no regrets whatsoever, none.
She's got no regrets. She sits around and strokes cats all day. I mean,
she's going to live to be about 180.
She sounds absolutely lovely. I mean, is the love
lovely?
Mutual, Abi? I mean, how's it going for you?
For me,
yeah.
Fantastically.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately, as a franchisor, you're that's what you want, isn't it? I think my sort of ethos is that if I've got happy franchisees, then ultimately they sell franchises for me because people will go and actually quite often we've been very, very lucky that we've not had to spend really very much money on advertising for franchisees. We've actually got too much interest at the moment, which I think is quite unusual. I didn't realise quite how unusual it was, actually, until I was listening to Carl earlier.
And are you still working together, you and Carl?
We have regular, coffees and, like you do. But yeah, he's always on the end of the phone if I need him. And actually, there's contractual things that come up and with franchisees and that kind of thing, and really it just takes time and you if you deal with 3 or 4 contractual issues, then but you do need somebody to guide you because obviously contracts are very important.
What do you think was there anything that you would do differently if you could have your time again?
Well, probably not do it when I've just had 2 very young children. I was building my franchise business when I was pregnant. So other than that, not really. No, I mean, I've been really lucky. I think I've had good advice. We've worked really, really hard in a very short space of time.
And you've won lots of awards, you were telling me earlier.
We have, yeah. We've been nominated, I think, for about 10 or 11. I've lost count now.
That's
just terrible, isn't it? I know, sorry. But we were very lucky to win the Smarter 100, which recognises the best 100 businesses in the UK.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, which was fab. And Hearts Business Awards, we won Best New Business. So yeah, we've been. But again, I mean, we it's a great profile raiser for Longcroft, and I think we always, as a franchisor, we must keep the business, on track.
Right. I don't want listeners to think this is a sort of unmitigated sort of franchise loving. The important thing is notice that there is good practice and bad practice, and not all franchising stories are as happy as Gill's and Abi's. I spoke to Debbie Gilbert in the last couple of days, who now runs a very successful business, Viva Business Networking. But earlier on in her sort of business career, she had a slightly less enjoyable experience of franchising.
I was looking for a networking group to join in my area and came across their website, and they were advertising they were starting a group in my area. So I contacted them and they said, oh, well, actually, no, we're looking for somebody to start a group in that area. We've had somebody and they've dropped out and we're looking for someone to start something. Would you be interested? Yes. I mean, alarm bells should have rung in my head straight away, really. Yeah. And I said, well, actually, I might be, because at the time I was looking to franchise my own business. And I was thinking, actually, this might be a good exercise for me to understand a bit more about the franchising industry. Mm-hmm. I went to meet with them. I spoke to their first franchisee, and she'd had a, so far, very positive experience with them. And they seemed very nice, very capable. They'd won a business award. They'd had the business running for around about 2 years. Mm-hmm. And I went to some of their events in Essex, was quite, chatted to people at the event about their experience. So, yeah, I actually felt quite confident at that point.
But as I understand it, it didn't quite turn out that way. What happened next then?
Well, what then happened, they were advertising the areas at £4,000, so you got a territory, you paid your £4,000 and you got a day's training, use of the logo, the website, and they started to sell franchises really, really quickly. So they grew from myself and the first franchisee to 13 franchises in 6 months, and that's quite significant growth in the franchise industry. And essentially what happened, they couldn't manage that growth. The kind of credit crunch started later that year, and they were then struggling to sell more franchises by the end of that year. So they then decided to knock the price down. Now, by that point, I'd bought a second area because my groups had gone really well. So I'd actually ended up spending $7,000 on my franchise. But what I quickly realised was they would give a franchise to anyone with a chequebook. They had no selection process. And there was a couple of things that happened towards the end of 2008, early 2009, that really disturbed me. Was that there was one particular lady who had a Spanish school. So she taught children Spanish in small groups, like an after-school club. And she was lovely, but she really just wasn't the right person to be running a networking group. And I personally would not have sold her a franchise. Anyway, they did sell her a franchise, but what they did to her was they told her it was, they reduced the price to £2,000 an area, which obviously started to upset a lot of the franchisees.
Yes, who paid more than that. Yes.
They sent her an email saying, you must sign up before the end of December at the £2,000 price, because we're going to put it up in January. We've just been doing a low offer of £2,000 for the last couple of months, and this is expiring on 31st of December. And luckily she had that on an email. So she took a loan out, single parent, took a loan out, bought the franchise. It didn't go very well. In fact, it completely bombed. But what was even more upsetting was by late February, early March, they discounted the franchise down to £1,000. So this caused lots of issues with the people who had franchises, because people were getting really upset. And, basically people, I had made back my franchise fee myself by this point. However, I'd paid £7,000 or something. They were now flogging at £1,000 per area. So one of the franchisees started to look at legal proceedings, and I went to see a solicitor, and the solicitor said to me, the thing with you is that they will potentially come after you if you walk away from the franchise, because you're the most successful franchisee they've got, and potentially they could sue you for breach of contract, so you're in a difficult predicament. The girl who'd actually got the email in her hand had a lot of power with that. because whilst a franchisor can suddenly, today they could tell you the franchise is 15,000, tomorrow they could tell you it was 8,000, there's nothing legally you can do. But actually, if someone has said to you, that price is going to go up after a certain date, now that was the legality that she got them on, because you can't say to someone, sign up now because the price is going to go up, and then you put your price down. That was the technicality, that she started legal proceedings against them, and they liquidated the business, which released me, obviously, from my contract because the business didn't exist anymore, and I rebranded my company to Viva Business Networking, which is still going today.
And which we should say is very successful.
Well, we run networking events for local business owners, from mumpreneurs right through to larger companies. So, you know, we run a range of morning and lunchtime events, no membership, and people just book on. I want to make it really clear, I am not saying franchising is a bad idea, because what I learned from my experience was how not to run a franchise, and that actually is really good experience and good knowledge to know, isn't it?
Carl, Debbie's story obviously not quite so happy. Is it a familiar story for you?
Sadly, very familiar. I would say many elements of her story, you know, sound just like what you hear from lots of other people, and one thing there, Debbie's obviously a smart person, you know, not didn't set out to make bad decisions, but nevertheless ended up in a really bad situation. Some of the other people involved. What's particularly common is these ones that go wrong is the people setting up the franchise just shouldn't be doing it at all, and haven't got a clue what they're doing, are dishonest, haven't really set up a franchise in any way, shape or form. And you know, everybody else ends up paying the price for it.
Yeah, I think what we'll do now actually is we'll move straight on, because Debbie herself, obviously, she said you learn from these things, and she came up with her own little list of tips of what she would advise others. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys think of it.
What else would you say to others who are thinking of buying a franchise?
I would look at the business and look at what they're actually selling, because actually, could you set it up yourself? Do you actually need to buy a franchise? What are you actually getting for the franchise? Who is running the franchise for a start? Do some research on the directors of the company, because when I did some research after I bought my franchise, I probably wouldn't have bought it if I'd actually done research into them personally. I think you need to talk to other franchisees, and obviously I was in a difficult situation because there was only one other person, and at that point she'd had quite a positive experience. So the more people you can talk to, the better. Go and see some of the business advice people. Take the figures with you. Go and talk to a bank and get them to have a look at it. And are they registered with the British Franchise Association? You know, it's not, even if you're only being charged £2,000 or £3,000 for a franchise, which is fairly low entry, you know, what are you getting for that? I personally would look at something that had at least 5 years trading figures, because, you know, you're investing quite a lot of money, and some people I've sort of worked with, you know, spent £70,000, £80,000 on a franchise and lost money. And, you know, you need to look at, sometimes it all looks great, and my advice is if it looks too good to be true, it's like anything, it probably is. But some people get sort of carried away with the thought, oh, I'm going to get a business in a box, or I'm going to get a business that I don't have to do I just have to go and find customers, I don't have to do anything else. Well, actually, with any business, even if you've got a franchise, you've still got a huge amount of work to do to get it off the ground. A lot of people I talk to end up tying themselves into a franchise agreement where they're paying quite high costs back to the franchisor each month. They've gone in at low entry, so they maybe only paid £3,000 or £4,000 for the franchise, but they're losing over 50% of their income back to the franchisor. And therefore, they're not making a living wage. And I would always ask for 3 projections. I would ask for, you know, optimistic, pessimistic, realistic. And even then, I would look at the pessimistic figures and reduce them slightly, because, you know, you've just got to be really on the ball with your numbers.
Carl, what did you mean? Would you agree with all that advice or not?
I'm afraid I wouldn't agree with all of it. I think the sentiment of taking responsibility is absolutely right, and totally take responsibility is I don't think it really helps to talk to banks unless you're trying to buy really large franchises. They have very little business expertise these days. unless you want to borrow large sums of money, not really the right people to talk to. The British Franchise Association, the BFA, which you mentioned, is not a guarantee of any franchise. I've had people come to me who've bought BFA franchises and still had problems, and it doesn't claim to be a guarantee either. So, they're two key points I would disagree with. The general sentiment of taking responsibility is definitely right. The thing about what people pay every month as fees, people often drop out of franchises because they think they're paying lots every month, and they often then struggle and go out of business, not realising how much support they're getting and how much marketing and branding that is behind that. So, it's something that needs careful looking at. Some franchisors undersell the value that they give. Yeah. It's only when people leave they realise that.
Okay, Abi, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think when we were setting our monthly fees, for me it had to be a complete no-brainer. So I had to put myself in a franchisee's position, and would I, the offering that I was offering, would I accept it? And actually that's how we sort of worked it out. The support and the marketing had to be comparable to the monthly maintenance fee that they were paying.
Right, terrific. We've had Abi Purser in the studio. She runs Longcroft Luxury Cat Hotels, and Carl French from Replico. We've still got Clare McAnulty and Vicky Scott, co-hosts in the studio. Claire, what do you think you've learnt briefly tonight?
I think one thing that comes up time and time again is do your research, and quite often you go into business, you're keen, you're excited and you're enthusiastic, and you do tend to just want to start right away and do whatever it is you want to do. But particularly with franchising, I would say, for goodness sake, do your research on the company, the people that are running it, and just in general on franchising.
Okay, and Vicky, we've got about sort of 45, half a minute. What do you think?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with what everybody's saying. It's clearly a very complex route to grow your business, and it's also a complex way to start a business. So it's very important that you look at all the fine detail, that you really know what you're letting yourself in for in the short and the long term. Yeah. Don't make any snap decisions. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. You've really got to put the work in. You've got to really understand what you're going for. Like anything else, there's good uns and bad uns, and we've been talking to some good uns here. Abi Purser, also her first franchisee, Gill Reynolds. Debbie Gilbert now runs a very successful business, as I said, and we got a good dose of realism from her on her experience, and of course thanks to Carl French. So this has been our franchising special on the business. Thank you very much, and good night.
You've been listening to The Business on Radio Verulam. If there's anything in the show you want to talk to us about, phone us on 01727 839 926 or email thebusiness@radioverulam.com.